What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. We have our Super Bowl matchup, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs, the matchup that everyone was rooting for and everybody wanted last week. So Matt and I are going to get into that a little bit today, but mostly we're going to talk about the AFC and NFC championship games and what they mean for the losers more today because we're going to do our big Super Bowl preview next week before the game. So you're not going to want to miss that. But before we get started, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Send us your Super Bowl pick. Let us know who you think is going to win and why. And as always, really appreciate you guys listening, and we love to hear from you. So with that said, let's grab Matt. Let's talk about the losers of the AFC and NFC championship, the Buffalo Bills and the Commanders, and start looking at the Super Bowl a little bit and what it means moving forward. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, fresh off of conference championship weekend, ready for the most exciting Super Bowl matchup that we've had in a long time. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm still upset that you didn't have the strength to do our alternative plan for this podcast.
Yeah, right after conference championship weekend was over and we found out it was going to be Chiefs Eagles. I told Matt, I was like, you know what we should do is just do a podcast where we don't talk about football at all and don't acknowledge football. And like, you know what we should have done is got on here and done a half an hour on De'Aaron Fox requesting a trade from the Sacramento Kings. And then like a half an hour on the Pistons turnaround and then just ended it and like come back next week with a Super Bowl preview. Matt, I feel like I'm the only one who's actually excited for the Super Bowl.
I don't want I don't want to say it's boring because yes, like watching Saquon Barkley is always exciting. Watching Mahomes is always exciting. But also it's just very tired and I think a lot of people feel like the outcome is pretty predetermined.
Yeah. I think the thing people are having a hard time with is that four of our last five Super Bowls have been Chiefs 49ers, Chiefs Eagles, Chiefs 49ers, Chiefs Eagles.
Yeah.
And this like random ass Rams Bengals game is like the gold standard that's even getting us through this time that we're in
Matt
right now.
Stafford saved us all.
Matt Stafford and Joe Burrow. There was what a beautiful game that was. Like just out of nowhere. I mean, the Rams went all in that year, but like just it's
Yeah.
funny to look back on it now and see that it's been three teams playing in four of the last five Super Bowls, including the
hmm
Chiefs being in all four of those and potentially winning all four of those. We'll see how this one goes. But there's just this one random game where it's Rams Bengals, and that was probably the best Super Bowl. I'll give the Chiefs credit for this though, is that like the Super Bowls they've been in, like the Chiefs are an entertaining team.
Yes.
The games are always fun to watch, but the problem is that it feels like a superhero movie where it's like, okay, here's our hero and he's going to get beat up and the odds are all going to look like they're against him and oh no, he's going to pull it out at the end with like the power of friendship and something that he pulled out of his ass. And that's kind of the Kansas City Chiefs in every single one of these big games is like they look like they're going to
You
lose somehow, they're possibly going to lose and then
Yeah, the problem is that we all know who the friendship is with.
yeah, I was going to say the power
And
of refereeing and pulling shit out of your ass. That's how Kansas City wins these games. But I don't
yeah.
I'm kind of excited for the game. I think if you took the team names off, like if you took the stickers off the helmets, I think people would be way more excited because at this point, I do think these are the two best teams. I thought the Lions were really the best team in the NFC this year, but with all the injuries to their defense, like Philly's healthy. So right now, I think they're a better team. But I like the Chiefs. Everybody wants to pick like the Ravens and the Bills and all these other teams, and the Chiefs were still 15-2 this season, with one of their losses being with Carson Wentz as the starting quarterback. They've won something crazy like 16 straight one score games now, and they're not super exciting to watch. It's not the most fun to watch the same team win every year,
Mhm.
but they are they are a good team, and I think obviously the best team in the AFC at this point.
All of the officiating manipulation aside, like I don't think that any of the teams that they played on their path here did enough to win those games, even without like that. Um, you know,
Well, like this
I
is
would probably place a lot of blame on Sean McDermott again. But like at the end of the day, there's a reason why we have our rule about Patrick Mahomes because like Tom Brady and Joe Burrow are the only ones who have ever stepped up to the plate and
yeah.
gotten it done.
I was gonna say the only guy who has beaten Mahomes more than once is announcing games for Fox right now. So
Yeah,
it's kind of where we're at. But I mean, that's part of being the better team is that you have the better coach and you're more disciplined.
yeah.
And I want to talk about Sean McDermott in a minute because I think he was outcoached again on
Mhm.
Sunday, and that was a large portion of why they lost. But what I wanted to say about the Super Bowl though is like I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, we already saw this game," and yes, we saw these two teams only 2 years ago, but I think that they're both drastically different from the last time they played.
Yeah,
People are like, "This is the same Philly team," and I disagree. I think they're a very complete team. I think like pretty much everything outside of quarterback and coach, Philly is better. But this is the same thing we talked about last week, where it's like, yeah, when we're
yeah.
this deep in the playoffs, it's quarterback and coach, and now you're talking about the best quarterback and the best active coach. So it's a step up from last week. But like the thing that gives me some hope for Philly in this game, and the reason I think it'll be a lot better than, well, I guess the last one was good too, but the thing that gives me more hope for Philly in this game is that they have a true game breaking, game wrecking player in Saquon Barkley,
Hmm.
and that this is a very different weapon, like a very different and very unstoppable weapon that the Philadelphia offense has.
Yeah,
And this is the time to have him touch the ball 35 times in a game. This is where you find out how far the human body can go as far as getting
yeah.
touches on a football field. This is what you signed him for. You go all out here. You do not save him for next season. So
No.
we're going to do the big Super Bowl preview next week. So like I don't want to jump into it too much, but like my initial thoughts on the game, I am not just automatically going the Chiefs are going to win this. I I may still end up picking them, but this is not a situation where like as soon as I found out the Chiefs were playing the Bills, I was like, I'm betting the Chiefs. They're winning. I'm not as convinced on this Chiefs Eagles game as a lot of people seem to be, just kind of treating it as an inevitability that the Chiefs are going to three-peat.
I will give Philly a puncher's chance, like maybe a 10% chance of pulling this game out. And that hinges entirely on, and this is a credit to Saquon Barkley that I'm even giving it this much of a chance, is that they cannot stop him all day long. That is the only way because Jalen Hurts has shown me nothing over the last 3 years, really, that leads me to believe that Steve Spagnuolo's not going to be able to just scheme up a plan for him that he's going to have a bad day for.
Yeah, I actually thought Jalen Hurts was really good this past week. He played well against the Commanders, but I don't think
Yeah,
the
but like you also have to factor into the fact that like your job gets made a lot easier when your team decides to say, "Oh, this team can't stop the run. Let's lean into that." And then the defense has to react to it, and so everything's open.
yeah, but you're not beating the Chiefs by drop back passing with Jalen Hurts. Like if you're
No,
gonna win this game, it's Hurts legs and Saquon Barkley all day.
no, but what I'm saying is that he's gonna have to make some pretty big time throws in order to keep this defense from like really focusing in solely on Saquon Barkley.
Yeah. So we'll break it down more.
Yeah.
I'm like you're like 90-10 Chiefs. I'm like 60-40 Chiefs right now. So like I gotta really get into the like X's and O's and all that stuff. I mean, probably waste
Also, have you forgotten the rule?
no, I was gonna say I'm probably gonna waste a lot of time because I'm gonna do all this stuff and then just come back next week and be like, yeah, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Fuck it. You don't pick against Patrick Mahomes. One thing I promised myself I would do if I ever had a podcast, like before we started this, I used to listen to the Ringer NFL show back during like the Patriots heyday during their dynasty. And there was a guy on the Ringer NFL show named Robert Mays who is now he's somewhere now. I have not kept up with where he is because I think he's awful. I just think everything he does is awful. But he used to pick against the Patriots like every single playoff game. It'd be like a divisional round game against the Texans. And he'd be like, oh, I really think the Texans are going to win this one. And then the Pats would win. And we would go on to play the Steelers in the AFC Championship. And he would like go on this diatribe about why the Steelers would beat the Patriots. And then the Patriots would win. And then we played the Falcons in the Super Bowl. And he did this whole thing about how like he just hated the Patriots. So he picked against the Patriots at every single turn. And I promised myself when Kansas City started being good and winning all the time, I was like, I'm never going to be that sports person or podcaster or whatever
Hmm.
that just picks against this team all the time just because I don't like them or like I'm bored of them or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
I've picked Kansas City in like 5 of their last 6 playoff games. I think the only one I didn't pick them in was the AFC Championship against the Ravens last year, but it's because I had like legitimate reasons that I thought the Ravens were going to beat them. Didn't think the Ravens
It,
were only going to run the ball 6 times. But yeah. Anyway, I just like I hate this.
but
This
here's the thing though, because this is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Philly will abandon the run.
they might only have Saquon gets 6 touches in the Super Bowl.
This is the only team that things fall that way for. I don't understand it, but it happens all the time.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, and we saw it again on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. Is I said on this podcast a couple weeks ago that the Chiefs are going to chief. Is that this is the thing? Is you have to basically beat them twice in a game,
Mhm.
and we saw it with Buffalo where they have that 4th and 1 where they try to do their own version of the tush push, and it gets
Mhm.
stopped. It's he gets it. He gets the first down. One ref says it's a first down. The other says it's not. They review it. Of course, upon review, they're like, yeah, it's not a first down. It's Chiefs ball, even though it was pretty clear that it wasn't. And then the Chiefs go right down and score. And now that was like the perfect example of Chiefs gonna Chief is because you already are beating them. And there's like every single game, the Chiefs are gonna get a game breaking moment, basically. Like I referred to it as an extra life a couple weeks ago. I was thinking today about you remember playing NBA Street
Yeah.
and you would get all these skill points and save up for a game breaker and you would do like a game breaking 3 and it not only would give your team 3 points, but it would take 3 points away from the other team. And it's like, yeah, if the other team hits a game breaker on you, you can still win, but it's way harder and that's what the Chiefs do every week is that like there's some point in the game, whether it's a bad call by the ref
Yeah.
or a back-breaking turnover or just someone doing something stupid at the wrong time on the other team, they just get that one play that gives them like the extra
Hmm.
life. I thought we saw that on full display on Sunday, but going back to Sunday, so the Chiefs beat the Buffalo Bills to get to the Super Bowl. Josh Allen has now lost to Patrick Mahomes more than any quarterback has lost to any other quarterback in NFL history in the playoffs. He's 0-4, which is the most losses one quarterback has ever had to another. And these guys are both still in their 20s and will probably see each other more. I honestly, I think at this point, if you're the Buffalo Bills or a Buffalo Bills fan, it's like, what do we have to do to climb this mountain? Because Josh Allen is now what, like 6-5, 7-5 in the playoffs, and 4 of his 5
Yeah.
career playoff losses are to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm Josh Allen leaving that game if I believe that I can beat him anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a test of his like mental fortitude going forward to like actually keep coming back into these games and like really competing with the belief that you can win. Because like these losses have not been on him primarily. Um, and I mean, I remember even just a couple of years ago, we were like, you know what? They really need to like shore up that defensive line because they were getting killed in the run. They still need defensive line help 2 years later. So I just,
This is the thing about this game is that like I feel like this applies to the Chiefs in a lot of ways, but especially against the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs because this was the first time the Kansas City Chiefs scored 30
mhm.
or more points all season.
Yeah,
And it just feels like if Buffalo
yeah,
scores 30, Kansas City's going to score 32.
yeah,
If Buffalo holds Kansas City to 13, Buffalo's only going to score 10.
yeah.
Like it,
And
it just feels impossible at this point.
and again to kind of go back to the like I put a lot of this on Sean McDermott. The, James Cook had 13 carries in that game. He was running for 6.5 yards per carry. Like, in what world, when a running back is moving the ball that efficiently on the ground, do you not get them 20 carries? In fact, like, I think it kind of comes back to what you were saying about Saquon. Do you see how much the human body can handle at that point? Because if you don't win in this game, there is no Super Bowl.
James Cook also had 3 catches for 49 yards. So
Yeah,
he had what,
he was
16 touches?
murdering them. Every time he touched the ball, it was a positive thing.
Yeah, 16 touches for 130 yards,
Yeah.
134 yards. So yeah, I there was a lot of things I think you could hammer Sean McDermott on in this game, like James Cook not touching the ball more.
Mhm.
I I agreed with going for it, but I felt like they kept running that tush push over and over again on 3rd and 4th and short, and they were not getting it convincingly. They like I don't feel like they get it. I don't feel like they got it convincingly once, either this week or last week against the Ravens.
How did they not
So
have an RPO to run in that play?
this is the
Like
this is the thing
get
is
get him in the shotgun with James Cook and have like Shakir running a slant.
yeah, that was my problem was more, and I know like hindsight's 2020, but my problem was that they were spamming the same play over and over again. And I think it was you that I texted this to before it got stopped is I was like, they need to
Yeah.
do something else because I know Philly is like really, really good with the tush push, but
Yeah.
I think a large part of that is because Jalen Hurts is like kind of smaller and more dense than Josh Allen is.
Yeah.
And that Josh Allen's value with his legs does not come on these like fourth and short sneaks kind of thing.
No, he's not the like I'm gonna get low and drive guy. Like he's hard to take down because once he gets up to speed, that is so much weight moving so fast,
Yeah.
which is the opposite of a sneak play. And that's not to say that like you can't sneak it with him ever, but when everyone and their mother knows, oh, well, yeah, he's gonna sneak it because he's done it the last 4 times he's been in this situation. He's just not gonna get it.
Yeah. And like to not even have James Cook out on the field.
Yeah,
It's the most critical play of the game. It's fourth and short. You're just kind of automatically assuming you're going to be able to get it. Although the last like 4 times you tried it, it wasn't super convincing. I was just waiting for one of those to go wrong. I was like, they're going to keep doing it.
yeah,
And eventually one of them is going to be either stopped or it's going to be weird enough where they make a call on the field. And that's exactly what happened is they make the call on the field that is Chiefs ball
yeah.
and they don't have enough video evidence to overturn that. And so they're just like, well, we got to go with the call on the field. It's Chiefs ball.
And on a fundamental level, the advantage of having Josh Allen is that he is a dynamic athlete who's also a great quarterback. And in a gotta have it play, for you to not utilize his strengths at all, like really calls into question for me, like your decision making capabilities. I mean, it just, why are you neutering your best player in that moment?
Yeah. I have a question for you on Sean McDermott because I think that the Bills are in this almost impossible spot where you have this coach who's good enough to like get you here, right? You're
Mhm.
a semi contender every year. You're in the second round of you're like, you win playoff games every year. They've been to a couple AFC championships. They've done well, right? They've done as well as any team not named the Kansas City Chiefs can possibly do in the AFC. If you fire McDermott, you risk bringing in someone worse,
You do.
but you also chance bringing in someone better.
Yeah.
But I think the hard thing is like, so if they fired McDermott on Monday, if they were like, we're sick of this,
Hmm.
all of the good coaches have kind of been swooped up already,
Yeah.
you know? So you're like, you almost need something really bad to happen to you so that you can make this decision. Like, and I think that this is
Yeah.
such a hard place to be in football, in business, in
Yeah.
love. Like, you, the decision is on, you have to make a decision. And I feel like so many of us, and I'm speaking from personal experience, I had a girlfriend in college who names will not be named on this podcast, but Matt knows who it is. Uh, who I thought about breaking up with for 6 months. And I couldn't like when you're trying to make a decision like this, and I feel like this is where the Bills are with Sean McDermott is where I was with my college girlfriend, is you're just waiting for something to happen to make the decision for you, where it's like, ah, God, can't she just get really drunk one weekend and kiss someone else? And then I know, but you're in this like limbo state where it's like, okay, something like really good needs to happen. Like we need to win a Super Bowl so that we know to keep Sean McDermott, or we need to miss the playoffs or get knocked out and embarrassed in the first round so that we know to fire him. And neither of those things are happening. And it's like there's just enough good for you not to fire him, but also just enough bad where you can't fire him. or like there's just enough bad
Yeah.
where like you want to fire him, but there's just enough good that you can't fire him. And so you're stuck in limbo of like,
Yeah.
you're the one that has to make the decision and take on all the risk. And when you do decide to like, it's when you think about firing him, you think about like the smoking hot redhead who's going to be your next girlfriend, but also there's a chance there is no next girlfriend, right? And so it's like scary to go out there alone, but the only one who can make the decision is them. And I feel like it's such an impossible situation of like, do you take that risk?
Yeah.
It's my super long way of asking you, what would you do?
Yeah. I am possibly the worst person to ask this just based off the fact that, I mean, what has it been like 4 years now that I've been on Sean McDermott as like, I kind of feel like you're the problem here. Um, like I feel like a change does need to be made, but to your credit, how? Right? How do you do this if he's getting you to the AFC Championship game most years? Like at that point, unless there are candidates from the remaining teams that made it to that stage, like everyone else has been picked over by the time you would need to make that move. Like you're not going to fire him mid-season because you're not going to throw away your season and a chance at a Super Bowl with a quarterback like Josh Allen. But like I I feel like we've reached a point where we kind of know like this is who Sean is. And he's not learning, he's not growing. Like we had all season where it was all about, hey, like Josh doesn't need to be Superman. He is just facilitating and we're letting the run game do its job. And then biggest game of the year. You know what, Josh, just do it.
Yep. Yeah, and this is the thing is like this was such classic Bills
Yeah.
to this is the thing I've said about them every year is that and this is what they did last year when Kansas City came
Mhm.
to Buffalo in the playoffs is like we have this game plan, we're going to execute it the entire
Mhm.
game until it comes down to the most important moment and then we're throwing three fades with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And this wasn't quite that, but it was like okay, Josh, you don't need they're like, we don't need you to be Superman. That's not the game plan. You got help, blah, blah, blah. And then in the most important moment, they're like, they just throw the cape at him and they're like, put it on. We need you to save us. We don't know what to
Mhm.
do. It's like, no, you knew what to do. You had it.
Yeah.
And
You
this
did it
is
all year.
this is my big problem with this game is that everybody wants to go back to 1 4 and 1 call and be like, oh, well, the refs fucked the Bills. And that's why they lost. But you know what happens immediately after that 4th and 1 call? The Chiefs go 5 plays, 59 yards for the easiest touchdown drive they've had the entire season.
Yeah.
The entire season. Mahomes scrambles for 7. Mahomes to Juju Smith Schuster, who couldn't even get on the field in New England. In New England, where we have no wide receivers. Mahomes hits Juju Smith Schuster for 29, 7-yard run by Hunt, 6-yard run by Hunt. Mahomes for a 10-yard rushing touchdown. Literally, like, hot knife through butter drive.
Yeah.
Now you're down 7. And it's like, okay, legacy drive. The Bills come back and they do get the touchdown. Josh Allen throws the touchdown to Curtis Samuel on 4th down. And it's like, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, we're right back in it. Chiefs, 8 plays, 51 yards, field goal to go ahead. And it's
Yeah.
like, so you get the ball back, down 3, 3:33 left. And a chance to win this game and a chance to erase the memories of 13 seconds and
Yep.
the other 2 playoff losses you have at the hands of Patrick Mahomes. Steve Spagnuolo sends this blitz on 4th down that like somehow nobody on your entire offense, including Josh Allen, saw coming.
Yeah.
You're completely and blatantly unprepared for Steve Spagnuolo to throw
Yeah.
an exotic blitz, like, which I get in a way because Steve Spagnuolo is like the greatest to ever do
It
this.
is what he does,
And
right?
it was a great call. But to have three offensive linemen not blocking anybody while Josh Allen's running for his life and like almost making a huge play if Kincaid is able to bring that in, like it's a really tough ball to catch, but he could have had it.
Yeah. But
He's not ready for it.
I mean, like, yes, like Joe Brady has to see that coming, right? Not necessarily like that exact blitz, but he has to know there's going to be intense pressure coming because that is what Spags does in these moments.
Yeah, but
But to kind of go back to what I've been saying, Sean McDermott, you have been in these games against this team, against this defensive coordinator. How many times? How are like you are the head coach? You have to be a part of that offensive game plan. How are you not prepared for that?
e-
Because that's it, it all rolls downhill, right?
even
And
before that though,
yeah.
like yeah, so like yes, like where people are gonna harp on like these fourth down calls where it's like
Hmm.
they go for the sneak and they get it, but they call it back or they don't get it or whatever it is. The
Yeah.
Chiefs get the ball. They this exotic blitz comes on 4th and 5, the last play of the Bills for the game, and they're not
Hmm.
ready for it. But let me illustrate a point here by reading you the plays that led up to that fourth down. So down 333 left, 1st and 10. Tyler Johnson, right end for -1 yards. Tyler fucking Johnson. James Cook isn't even on the field. Homie has 134 yards on less than 20 touches at this point.
Yeah.
Josh Allen scrambles for 12, first down. Josh Allen, incomplete pass. Josh Allen, incomplete pass. Josh Allen, complete pass to Amari Cooper for 5, bringing you to fourth down, where Josh Allen throws an incomplete pass. For people who think we're being dramatic or extreme by saying that Buffalo does this every fucking time,
Yeah.
they do it every time. And that's why they're Buffalo. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I have to say this on the podcast every single year. They're the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills will never win anything significant. Ever. It's like the Chargers. The Chargers are going to
Yeah.
charge. The Bills are never going to win a Super Bowl. I don't care who's on the team. I don't care how great Josh Allen is. I don't care if you trade Sean McDermott out
Yeah.
for Bill frickin' Belichick. The Buffalo Bills will never win a
Yeah.
Super
They need their once in a lifetime personality that comes in and like cleanses the aura of everything about the franchise. That's what those franchises need,
Bowl. They
right?
need to move out of
Because
Buffalo.
right? Because like everything you're saying is also like things that were said about Detroit. And I don't think anyone's sitting here saying like, well, Detroit's not here because, they're the Detroit Lions. They're saying they're not here because they had a historic amount of season-ending injuries and probably would be in the Super Bowl without it,
But
right?
isn't that in and of itself the Detroit Lions way? Is that something that's
You
not your
you you
fault
could
screws
you
you?
could argue it, but like I think the thing that would define same old Lions more than anything is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory,
Yeah.
right? And that is not something that they do anymore, right? And that is because of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes.
I don't think the Lions are part of this group of teams. I have the Bills are in this group of teams with the Minnesota Vikings and the Chargers. It's like those three are like the we're gonna keep getting to the playoffs and losing in horrific fashion.
No, no, the
Teams.
problem is that we were doing those things in the regular season to prevent us from doing it in the postseason.
Yeah. That was the problem is like the Lions were more in like the Cleveland Browns area for such a long time where it's just
Yeah,
like it, it's just complete ineptitude. You can't
yeah,
even get to the point where you can choke like these other teams. But now
yeah,
that you've turned that around, it could be a different story. We'll see. But like my
yeah,
point remains is that the Bills, Vikings, and Chargers are never ever going to win a conference championship game. I I I can't see a world where any of them do because like the Bills are the perfect example of this because
yeah.
you'd be like, oh well, if we could just get our quarterback. Josh Allen is
That
phenomenal.
that is the quarterback that you would cheat. Like,
He is.
if you take everything and put it in a vacuum, like what we've seen Josh Allen do on a field side by side with what we've seen Mahomes do on a field, like to strip everything else away, the wins, all that stuff, there's a strong chance that most people take Josh Allen over him.
But this is the problem is that Mahomes has now reached that area that like Michael Jordan and Tom Brady
Yeah,
and
he's mystified.
well, there's that, but also it's just this area where he's going to stop every like he's not only going to win championships, he's going to
Mhm.
stop all of his peers from ever accomplishing what they could have accomplished if he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
Jordan is I think the best example of this
Yeah.
because you have like numerous superstars from the 90s who never won anything because Jordan wouldn't.
Ewing,
Yep.
Alonzo Mourning.
The Jazz with Stockton and Malone,
Yeah.
Charles Barkley. Like,
Um, I think like even some of those Blazers teams with like Drexler.
yeah, Clyde Drexler is a good example. Like, there's so many guys, so many superstars from the 90s who never got a championship because they were unfortunate enough to be born in the era where Michael Jordan was dominating.
Yeah.
And you could say that about Brady to a degree, but also like all of Brady's peers got at least one,
Yeah.
right? Like Ben Roethlisberger got two, Peyton Manning had two, Breeze got one, Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers got one. Like all the guys did somehow find a way to get one.
Yeah.
The one,
It's
the one
the
that anybody else could have got was taken by Matt Stafford, who's part of
yeah.
the past generation. That could have been Burrows, and Burrow could have
Yeah.
at least been like he could have been the Drew Brees, where it's like I'm gonna
I
put up these awesome stats and get one.
Is that not a statement of how fucking great he is though that he got the one?
Yeah, no, that was the one that was up for grabs so far, and Matt Stafford took it. But it's just funny because leading up to the Chiefs Bills game, so many people were like, "Oh, Mahomes is Brady, and Josh Allen is going to be his Peyton Manning, his rival." And a lot of people were talking about the fact that for a while Peyton Manning could not get past Tom Brady, and then whatever year the Colts won the Super Bowl, '06, I think,
Yeah.
is he finally like got past Brady, and it was such a huge
Hmm.
thing, and then they go on to win the Super Bowl, and they're like, is this Josh Allen's time where he gets past him? And if you keep losing, you don't get to be Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
You know who you get to be? You get to be Philip Rivers and Matt
Yeah.
Ryan and all these numerous guys who put up great stats and won MVPs, and everybody was like, "Ooh, maybe this will be their year," and it never fucking was.
Yeah.
It never was. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it right now. Is that like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are not Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. They are Philip Rivers and Matt Ryan and whoever else.
And for what it's worth, like I think that is kind of where my vitriol towards Sean McDermott comes from, is we have seen what this guy can do. And like in fairness, like yes, some of it is on him. Not very much of it, but like some of it, you are playing in these games. There are additional things you can do to help his team win. But to just see year after year in the playoffs, Sean's shortcomings hamstringing like one of the most talented players any of us will ever watched. is just absolutely maddening because this kid deserves his shot at a Super Bowl. Like he's definitely earned a shot.
Yeah. People said the same thing about Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. And like, yes, they
Yeah,
did they
but
did win one together,
I
but
mean,
like,
I think anyone that's sane now knows that Aaron Rodgers didn't deserve anything and that he's kind of awful.
oh, I didn't mean from like a deserve standpoint. I meant
Yeah,
like people looked at Aaron Rodgers and they're like,
yeah,
look at like the physical talent and the
yeah,
stats. How is this guy not winning more Super Bowls? Oh, it's Mike McCarthy's fault.
yeah.
And
No,
it was, but it was
yeah,
also Aaron Rodgers' fault. And like, I'm not saying that
yes,
Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers are like the same
yep.
personality wise, but
And my reasons for pushing back on that just comes from years and years of like playing him in division, watching the way that he plays and knowing, hey, just because the stats looks great doesn't mean he's pushing pedal to the metal.
yeah. But this was the same thing with Green Bay for a while, is they're like stuck in this like we can't quite get anywhere better. Like, what do we
Yeah,
do? And they finally fire Mike McCarthy and bring in LaFleur. But you have to be put in a position where you can make that hire by having
yeah,
something horrific happen to you, like
yep,
losing in the first round of the playoffs. And if they just keep advancing to the AFC Championship, it's like, well, we can't really fire this guy. And now you're just paralyzed in this like we're just good enough to not do anything, but we can't
yeah,
quite get there. And then it's a question of will Josh Allen ever get over the hump?
yeah,
Like the rest of the AFC basically at this point needs Mahomes to get hurt and miss the playoffs
yeah.
to do anything because none of them can beat him.
Hmm.
None of them can beat him. The two guys who have beat him, like we said, one is in the booth at Fox and one was sitting at home because his team can't play defense to save their goddamn lives. Can't do it.
Uh, Side note, you hear that Anthony Richardson is working with the like same biomechanic dude that helped Josh like turn it around. That'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see over the next couple of years.
Fingers crossed for him. I mean, I hate the Colts. I was thinking
Yeah.
about this the other day because there's so many Patriot fans who are like hyper anti Chiefs right now. And they're like, I'd say it's like 50-50 on
Yeah.
Patriots Reddit, where half the fans are just like losing their fucking minds because they don't want Kansas City's dynasty to historically become better than the Pats and for Mahomes to like be considered the GOAT over Tom Brady. And then the other half is just like, it is what it is. They're going to do what they're going to do. And if they end up
Yeah.
like, they end up being better than the Pats, they end up being better than the Pats. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in that latter camp
Yeah.
where I'm like, yeah, man, when Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, passes Tom Brady, I'll come on the podcast and be like, yeah, he passed Tom Brady. He's the GOAT. Just say to get there though, you have to break Tom Brady's
Yeah.
records and win as many Super Bowls as Tom Brady did. So like it's still a long way
Yeah.
to go. But there's so many people who are like the Chiefs are the team I hate the most. And there's so many Pats fans that are like, they're the number one enemy in Foxborough, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I just really don't give a shit about Kansas City. Like outside of the fact that they're really good and it's kind of boring that they win every year. Like
Yeah.
it reminds me of the Warriors at this point when they had Curry and Durant, where it's just like you made the point, it kind of feels like a predetermined conclusion.
Yeah.
And when you know what's going to happen in sports, it makes it like that's the whole fun of sports is you never know what's going to happen. So
Yep.
that makes it boring. But there's so many Patriot fans who are like, oh, the Chiefs are the team I hate the most. And I'm like, the Chiefs are the team I hate like the 15th most. Like there are so many teams I hate from the Patriots dynasty, and the Chiefs are just not one of them. We had one high profile playoff game and we won it in Arrowhead
Yeah.
and then went on to win the Super Bowl. So like what there are so many other teams to hate, like the Colts and the Jets and the Giants and Philadelphia and like all these other teams. And people are just putting their energy in the wrong place.
Well, and I mean, I question how many of those people that are siding in that way are people who just like kind of jumped on the bandwagon during the dynasty because they were winning and like haven't left because, quite frankly, it's a bitch move, especially in football. Like it's not really accepted. Um,
Yeah, but I
it,
think
it
a lot
gets
of
it
the
gets tolerated a lot in basketball, but like,
I feel like in basketball with player movement, so many people are like fans of players and not teams.
yeah,
Like, I bet you there are more LeBron James fans than there are Sacramento Kings fans in the
I
world.
think there are more LeBron James fans than there are fans of most individual teams.
Yeah. And so, like, those fans are just going to be Cleveland and Heat and Lakers fans and whatever. And it's just fine because you're a LeBron fan. But in football, players don't move like that. And
Yeah,
also, like, nobody is a Jamar Chase fan. And I'm not like, I'm just picking a random great player.
yeah,
And like people are Bengals fans and love Jamar Chase because he's the best player on the Bengals. But if he gets traded to like Miami, people are not going to leave their Bengals fandom behind and be like, I'm a Miami fan. But I do think a lot of the people that are on Patriots Reddits making posts about like, fuck Mahomes, I hate him so much. He'll never pass Tom Brady are the same people who in like 3 years are going to be like, oh, I've always been a Kansas City fan. And Mahomes is my favorite and he's the GOAT now. And it's like, dude, just
yeah,
the Patriots subreddit has the most subscribers because the rise of Reddit also coincided with the Patriots dynasty.
yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. And so we still have the most, which means we also have the most idiots. So yeah, I was just thinking about that though, because you mentioned the Colts. I hate the Colts, dude. I hate the Colts so
Yeah,
much. Uh and Denver and the Jets and the Giants and the Eagles. Like there are so many
yeah,
other teams to hate. But um speaking of the Eagles, they are the other half of the Super Bowl, and they beat the Washington should be fighting Georges to get here.
yeah.
Washington, you might have won that one if you didn't have a shitty team name. It had an awesome team name like the Fighting Georges.
You might have had some fight in you.
Yeah, it's $5 million. Josh Harris 100% has $5 million he could just give me for the trademark. You just do it. Just give it to me. Even if you don't use the trademark, you could just have it and I'll stop making fun of you on the podcast. Imagine the black helmet, but instead of the little W, there's a little fighting George on their foreheads. How awesome would that be?
Have you ever watched like the oversimplified like history YouTube channel?
Yes, I
I'm
love
just
it.
imagining literally that art style of George
Yeah, no,
Washington.
that's exactly what it is. It's like that art style, but it's like the Fighting Irish logo where he's got
Yeah,
like his fist up but like he has the
yeah,
coat, but the coat is like a Revolutionary War
yep.
uniform. And yeah, that's it. That's exactly that. See, Matt, this is why Matt is my best friend and also the co-host of this podcast, is because he sees my vision. He sees my vision for this and he agrees with it. Sometimes one game that goes really badly, like this one did for Washington, kind of completely changes the narrative on a team. But I picked Philly last week, and one of the reasons I picked Philly was because I was kind of looking at Washington and just being like, are they really good enough to be in the NFC Championship? Or were they just like lucky's not the right word, but super fortunate that
Mhm.
they win that Bucks game and like they played really well. They totally deserved to win the Bucks game, but
Yeah,
also like the Bucks had some pretty cataclysmic mistakes the last couple drives of
yeah,
that game that helped Washington win, and easily could have gone the other way.
yep,
And then they go to Detroit and play a super decimated Detroit defense that loses another three guys
yeah,
during that game.
yeah. Well, and like 5 turnover Jared Goff game.
Yeah, and Goff melts
Like,
down. It's like a perfect
like,
storm for Detroit to
yeah.
lose.
Yes, like the stars aligned for them in that way, but also like this was a Washington team that was really hot. Like they were playing really, really good football. Like I don't think there's any way of getting around that. I think if I could go back to myself before we made that pick, I also would have reminded myself that Sam Cosmi was lost with a torn ACL, which is going to suck for them next year because he's probably not going to be ready for training camp. Uh, and Sam Cosmi is by far their best offensive lineman, and he's probably a top five guard in the NFL. I didn't think they were necessarily going to have to put up 55 to win this game, but I knew they were going to have to put up points to win this game.
Yeah.
And so, you know, losing your best offensive lineman, and that kind of taking the steam out of a really hot team.
They lost Deron Payne too. It was
Yeah,
like their best interior run stuffer.
yep.
So
So they were just, it went from the stars aligning to the stars scattering very, very
yeah,
quickly.
it felt truly like the underdog March Madness team that like the St. Peter's who gets like super hot and they start upsetting all these big dogs and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden you have a week off until the next game
yeah.
and the team comes in prepared for you and just beats the ever loving shit out of you. Like I thought the Philly versus Washington game got kind of out of hand score wise because of all the turnovers from Washington. Like
Yeah.
they fumbled a bunch and they had some issues, but um I just think there's this automatic assumption right now that Washington is going to be back in this position next year. And I just don't think it's that easy. Like we always talk about how
No.
progression of a player and a team is not linear. And I truly think there's a chance that Jaden Daniels can come back better next season and
I mean,
Washington is worse.
who who thought that the Detroit wasn't going to get back to the NFC Championship game,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, outside of delusional NFC North teams that got swept by us, but
Yeah.
like,
I
yeah,
just, I just don't think that like we should have this automatic assumption that Washington's going to come back and be a juggernaut or even like an 11-12 win team
yeah,
next season. And I think there's a lot of people operating under that assumption. And
mm,
it's, they could be, but I think that they need to work on the roster a
yep,
lot. And honestly, like speaking of criticizing coaches this weekend, I thought one thing that was really interesting was the beginning of that Washington game. Their first drive is 18 plays and they're continually going for it on fourth down. And we talked about this last week that they go for fourth downs more than any other team in the NFL and also get them more than any other team in the
yep,
NFL. And that's like who they are. And so this 18 play drive where they convert multiple fourth downs and they get to a fourth down in the red zone, 4th and 3, and decide to kick a field goal.
yeah,
And I'm like, you went for a fourth down from your own 40 to start the drive. Now you're at like the opponent's 15, and this is the one you don't want to go for. And then like the next, they have another drive. It was like 14-3 Philly. They get stopped. It's like a 3-and-out, and they do that fake punt. And they go down and have another fourth down and decide to kick another field goal to make it 14-6. I just thought like Dan Quinn kind of chickened out. And it's like fun to be this gambling man all season when you got nothing to lose and go for all
yeah,
these fourth downs. And like you're the away team in Detroit. And it's like, no, we're just going to go out there and let it rip. And
mhm,
whatever happens, happens. And we're playing with house money. And
yep,
literally, as soon as there are any expectations on you, you turn into a total chicken.
yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is where we're going to kick field goals.
Mhm.
And
And
I thought that
like,
was a big part of why they lost is because they got down early because of that.
yeah, and a huge part of why going for it on all those fourth downs works is because when you make that your identity, your team believes you're gonna get it. So then when you do that and then chicken out when you get into field goal territory, like what message are you sending to your offense?
Mm-hmm. This is very like Dan Quinn, though,
Yeah.
is in the biggest moments, things change and you start making different decisions than you've made all season.
Yeah.
So, like, my question for them is like, you're going to come back next season with expectations.
Yeah.
And you're not the scrappy underdog anymore. We talked about this with the Lions and with Houston this year is like
Hmm.
the target's on your back now.
Yeah.
How are they going to react to that? So that's probably going to be like my biggest narrative when we get to the NFC East preview next year is like,
Yeah.
what did they do? And you can't like rest on your laurels this offseason and be like, no, we're good. We're just going to develop the roster. Like you need to add because you have
Yeah.
you have blatant holes that really showed up on Sunday
Oh
as
yeah.
well. Um,
No, I mean offensive line and defense definitely like seriously need to be addressed.
yeah. My only other thing on Washington, so we talk about this all the time about how this is a copycat league,
Hmm.
and that almost always what happens is that teams look at these final four teams, and especially like whoever goes to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and always takes the wrong lesson from whatever happens here. As a Patriots fan and like a fan of someone who's rebuilding right now and just got a brand new coach and we have all this cap space, I'm just wondering if rebuilding teams are going to take the wrong lesson from Washington and just be like, we need to go spend a shitload of money because like we're we could just be the next Washington. Like everybody's going to look at Washington and just be like, that could be us. Let's go in. And I think we could see some like bad teams make stupid decisions this
Yeah.
offseason in the interest of trying to be Washington, when the correct lesson is that Washington like nailed free agency, not
Hmm.
with like big flashy signings, but with like really good signings,
Yeah.
and then nailed the draft. And it's like, yes, the lesson here is if you do really well in free agency and you do really well in the draft,
Hmm.
you can have a quick turnaround. You should not go and spend $200 million on T. Higgins and be like, we won free agency. We're the next Washington. Here we go. I also like those are the two big things for this offseason for me right now is like, do the bad teams just like spend a shitload of money and picks in free agency trying to be the next Washington? And do people look at Saquon Barkley and go, okay, running backs are valuable again. We got to start paying these guys. Uh,
Yeah, those two things.
Especially because it is such a good running back draft where like I think we could potentially see like three guys go in the top, or we could potentially see three guys go in the first round with like Gene T. Hampton and then Caleb Johnson, who
Yeah.
Caleb Johnson is probably going to be a my guy. And just anyone who plays for Iowa and puts up like 2,000 yards and 25 touchdowns is like on the
Yeah.
list
And
automatically.
there's going to be a litany of guys on day two.
Final thought on the Washington thing is there was a story about how fucking pissed off Dan Snyder was about Washington's success.
I
And
did see that.
I was like, man, I picked the Eagles, but now I really hope Washington wins the Super Bowl just to keep pissing this guy off more and more because it's hilarious. But
Yeah.
Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl in just over a week from now. This is going to come out on Friday, January 31st. The Super Bowl is the following Sunday. Next week, Matt and I will be back to break down the game, start talking about the on field, the off field, the narratives. We'll do our prop bets for the Super Bowl. I like to come with the made up props every year. We'll pick the over under on how many times we see Taylor Swift and how many other people we see in her box during the Super Bowl.
You're really committed to that phrasing.
Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell is excited about Taylor Swift's box at the Super Bowl. But yeah, for now, that is it for us. And before I get canceled, as always, Foul Doc we found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up, fouloutsports@gmail.com. Send us your Super Bowl picks and how many people are going to people you think are going to be in Taylor Swift's box during the Super Bowl.
Stay away from Taylor's box. All right.
Unless you're Travis Kelce.
It requires consent.
And you still can't really find us on TikTok because I haven't figured out that, you know, the two people who haven't figured out the TikTok mess are me and the US government.
Yeah.
We'll see. We might be back. Maybe not. Maybe we'll pop up on like Blue Sky or something. We'll let you guys know.
Yeah.
NBA trade deadline is also weirdly February 6th, which like
That feels early.
yeah, it's a week from today. It's the Thursday of Super Bowl week, which seems like not a good time and also pisses me off because one of my favorite podcasts to do after the Super Bowl every year was where I make up my top 5 favorite trades and like throw them at you and Clint from the trade machine. And like now we're going to miss that because we're doing Super Bowl preview next year. So it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so NBA trade deadline is next week. There's hockey, there's basketball. We have one more football game left, and that's it for football season. After that, we'll talk some basketball. We'll get into the NFL draft in April. Like there's good stuff coming up, but
Yeah.
this is it, man. This is a preview this week of what we're about to see, and then there's approximately like 6 weeks or 5 weeks after the Super Bowl where we got nothing until March
Yeah.
Madness. So
We'll have to do my classify every coach idea.
yeah, well, the good news for all of you is that Matt and I are going to be here to help you guys through that. Then we'll get into March Madness, hopefully with Clint. Then Matt and I will do all of our NFL draft stuff, which I think is our favorite. I think April's our favorite month.
Yeah.
To do. We do like 5 or 6 NFL draft pods, and that's like it's kind of our sweet spot. But we will be back next week to preview the Super Bowl. Again, picks on field, off field, all of that good stuff. And until then, my friend, I will see you later.
Yep. Bye, guys.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.